Brine Hamilton, thank you so much for having me back in your podcast loop. I have loved being interviewed by you. I think it was 7 times, if I'm not mistaken. So here we are back together. I want to share with you a really powerful opportunity to boost resiliency in organizations. And that is the Nurses Week Resiliency Reboot. Now, I know that you're all security experts, so you may be thinking, why are we talking about Nurses Week? Well, 2 reasons. Number 1, so many of you know the value of celebrating milestones. So I hope you will help me spread the word that there is this really powerful, done for you Nurses Week celebration. It's got the education with an amazing speaking colleague of mine, Stephanie Staples, a rewired nurse, resiliency expert. We've joined forces. I'm a recognition expert. We're going to make sure nurses feel valued, supported, and have so many tools to feel more resourceful in this challenging time. So please spread the word. The other reason I want to mention it is that this doesn't have to be just for nurses. All of your security professionals and the other departments you work with, why not make this one huge connective experience? Hospitals and facilities across North America, perhaps even across the world, could all benefit from a boost of resiliency. Would you not agree? And if we do it together, and if we take some of the burden off of you as busy leaders, I think we can make this happen really quickly. What do you think? I hope you will check it out. Visit us, learn more about what we're trying to do. Please spread the word. And if nothing else, just remember, Nurses Week is coming up, or the first part of May, varies a little bit country to country. Just please make sure you reach out to as many nurses as possible and say thank you. I appreciate you being on my team.
Be sure to subscribe to the Healthcare Security Cast so you don't miss a single episode. We're on multiple platforms including Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, and Audible, just about anywhere where you can listen to a podcast. For links to all of these sites, for links to join the Healthcare Security Cast community groups on LinkedIn and Facebook, or if you're interested in being a guest or being a sponsor, you can find all of this through one link. Check out our Linktree at linktree/Brine Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brine, B-R-I-N-E, Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brine Hamilton. And before we get into the show, I just want to thank our sponsors, 3D Network Technology. Reliability is our core value. Visit 3dnetworktechnology.com. And Genetec, delivering security strategies for healthcare. Visit Genetec, that's Genetec.com. And also the Change Execution Group and 360 Life Transformations. Visit 360lifetransformations.com.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast, the podcast dedicated to healthcare security, safety, and emergency management. If you are involved with a healthcare security program or desire to be, this podcast is for you. Join the conversation as we discuss the issues that matter to healthcare security professionals while leveraging the expertise of healthcare security thought leaders and experts in personal development. And now, here's your host, Brine Hamilton.
Welcome to the Healthcare Security Cast for Tuesday, April the 6th. I'm joined today by Cole Morris. Cole, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Brine. It's a pleasure.
Likewise, it's a pleasure to have you on. Now, I always like to start off by learning about our guest. So the first question I have for you is, who is Cole Morris?
Well, Cole Morris is a kid that grew up in South Jersey on the U.S. Eastern Coast, and I spent 2 years as a young child in Australia. And then after high school, I enlisted in the United States Air Force as a security specialist. And I've always had an interest in security, not necessarily law enforcement per se, but security. And I don't know where that comes from, but it's been a kind of a thing, a passion of mine. I spent 8 years in the Air Force in what was then called the Security Police, and did some work in intelligence and air operations. And after 8 years of mostly service in Europe, I was discharged. I attended college in South Jersey, got a degree in criminal justice, primarily because there were no programs in security management at that time. So I got my degree. I re-entered the Air Force as a commissioned officer, was a munitions and logistics officer, which meant that I dealt a lot with bombs and explosives and weapons of all sorts. As an officer, I had several international assignments, two of which were advising foreign governments, the Canadian Air Force on their CF-18 program up there, and my final assignment before retirement was advising the Singapore Air Force, the Republic of Singapore Air Force. So I've been around the track a couple of times, and that's my pre-security life. When I retired in 1993, I wanted to pursue a career in security, and that led to several positions ranging from uniformed security officer to directorships and managerial positions in various economic and government environments, including a Fortune 500 company. I oversaw security for the Census 2000 effort here in the United States, worked emergency management at the state level, and then after 9/11, that position changed from a training position to a training coordinator for Homeland Security training here in Arizona. And I ended up in healthcare as a campus supervisor, security supervisor for a small healthcare network here in Phoenix. And I spent 10 years there, retired in 2013 as the director of security. And after 2013, I remained active with the organization as a consultant, where I taught violence prevention to not only my old network, but also to various people online, where I've created several courses dealing with security and healthcare violence prevention and these types of things. I also taught as an adjunct faculty for Webster University in their Masters of Arts program, where I taught graduate level students in their security administration program. So that's it in a nutshell. Had a lot of great experiences, and so now I'm kind of just retired, and I'm doing the online training thing, and I'm having a blast.
Awesome stuff. Now, if I remember correctly, you actually have some of your courses up on Udemy.
Yes, I do. I've got several out there. What prompted this, Brine, is for years, young people, young job entrants, young security officers would come up to me asking, how can I make a career in security? And so I would give them my 2 cents worth of barracks wisdom, so to speak. And eventually one day I said, why don't I do a course? And so I put my first course out on Udemy. It's called How to Succeed in Your Security Career. And it's been out there for 5 or 6, 7 years, probably more than that. It's got several hundred, if not thousand, enrollees in it from all over the world. It's gotten some pretty good views. In fact, it's been awarded as one of the best rated courses on Udemy, and so I'm kind of proud of that. And so that kind of led to other things. And so I'm on Udemy, and I've got a couple of other platforms which I'm still kind of nurturing right now. But for example, right now I just finished a course on polygraph examinations, which I think will be useful, maybe not specifically to healthcare, but to protection professionals as a whole, because there are a lot of misconceptions about the use of the polygraph here in the United States. And I've done some violence prevention stuff on Udemy for young nurses, first-year nurses. I even have a course out there with how to profit by preventing healthcare fraud, which has seen some success. And I'm thinking about doing another one because I think COVID fraud is going to be coming at us like a freight train before you know it. So those are just some of the things I do to keep busy and entertain myself. I've got 4 grandkids that live across the street from me, and I've been married to Eileen for 40-something years. So just ticking along.
Sounds good. Now, the one thing I learned was if you can never remember the year, because you said 40-something years, if anybody ever asks, you just say, if anyone asks how long you've been married, you just say not long enough. That's the advice I've taken over the years.
Okay. Do I have to pay you for that, or I get college credit for that advice? Because that's good stuff.
Yeah, no, definitely a good resource. Just remember, it's not long enough. So
I've been to survival schools that haven't been that sage with their wisdom. That's good.
Awesome. Now, I'm curious, what was it that really pulled you into healthcare? Because obviously you have a lot of diverse experience, but was healthcare something you were planning to get into, or did it just sort of happen?
No, I just stumbled into it. I was working at the time in emergency management and healthcare security at the state level, and I just didn't like the bureaucracy and the lack of forward movement. So I was looking elsewhere. I answered an ad. I interviewed. I got the job as an on-site as a campus security supervisor, where I supervised a hybrid proprietary and contract security force. It was a very small hospital at the time. It's since expanded greatly, but I just ended up in it, and I really became kind of enamored with it. I didn't realize that it was such a specialized field. It is very, very similar to public law enforcement as far as the situations you find yourself in and the interactions you have with the public. It's very similar. Levels of violence, unfortunately, are very similar. And I just kind of enjoyed it. And so, like I say, I spent 10 years there. I was promoted a couple of times, and I retired as director of security just before my health network merged with a Scottsdale health network. And so now my old employer is just grown exponentially. They now have 5 major campuses, several hundred outpatient offices in the metro area, and they're building a 6th major campus out in the desert, which should be completed pretty soon. So they've gone all proprietary, and they are well equipped and appear to be well funded, and they've got a very robust canine unit, and so I'm glad to see them moving forward. But I'm at home now. I'm with grandkids and doing my online stuff, and things are pretty good.
That's awesome. Now, one of the things that you were kind of talking about there was just sharing your knowledge and your experience with those security leaders who are well, those in the security industry who are just looking to grow. I'm just curious, who are some of the people that you learned from throughout your career, and what are the lessons that they taught you that you're still applying today?
Well, there was a gentleman at the Fortune 500 technology company who stressed that you had to be a business leader first and a specialist in security second, much like an HR person or a marketing person or whatever, a facilities manager. You had to understand the business, okay, that you're in, and that includes understanding your own particular culture, your competition, how you make money, what are the challenges, because if you don't have at least a basic rudimentary understanding of the business and the culture, you're likely to be counterproductive in trying to protect that culture, which is after all, why they're paying you. So you need to have an understanding of what people are trying to accomplish, what the organization is trying to accomplish, and that's very important. He always made the reference to don't be a knuckle dragger that comes out of the basement every time somebody has a bad termination or there's a threat of violence. You need to be in a business mode all the time.
No, absolutely. You want to take that more professional approach. So yeah, I could totally appreciate that. Now, in terms of actually speaking on professionalism, what we're going to be talking about is uniforms, and obviously that has a huge impact on how security is perceived. So, as we're discussing the importance of uniforms and officer presence, why are uniforms so important?
I think it's basic that a uniform conveys a nonverbal message about the person wearing that uniform, and also by relationship, the organization, and certainly it reflects on you as the leader of that protective organization. So whether it's a proprietary or a contract security officer, that appearance is critical to the success of the mission of the department. And I can just tell you that in my day, I've seen some horrendous uniformed officers. And when I go into a facility, I don't care whether it's a mall, a corporate center, or another hospital, the first thing I do is I check out the security staff to see how they're dressed, how they appear, how they're groomed, and how they comport themselves while on duty, because that tells me a lot about that particular organization. So, first impressions matter, and first impressions are relayed by the way you appear in a uniform. And quite frankly, and what I try to relate to the guys is that, your job is tough enough. Why make it tougher by looking sloppy in a uniform? If you look like a slob and a bum, guess how you're going to be treated? You're going to be treated like a slob and a bum. So those are just some of the reasons why the appearance in a uniform is so important.
In terms of actually having security on site, whether they're in-house, whether they're outsourced, or it's a hybrid model like you had referred to earlier, a lot of times the stakeholders don't know the difference at all. So in light of this, what do you recommend as a uniform approach for a leader of either type of program?
Well, I think that a leader, let's say it's a shift supervisor, or let's say it's a contract supervisor, he or she should wear some kind of a rank or insignia or some kind of something to differentiate them from the line officer. That way, when people ask to see a supervisor or they have an issue, they can determine visually that they're dealing with somebody higher up on the food chain, so to speak. If you notice in many hospitals, all nurses dress the same. They all have the same ID card, and so you don't know whether you're talking to a nursing student or to a charge nurse. And it's important to, I think, to differentiate that in your interactions with the population in general.
Stylistically, what are some of the uniform options that you recommend for the healthcare setting?
Well, this has been debated for years, Brine, and I'll tell you, I'm a big proponent of the police slash quasi military type of uniformed officer for the most part, because I think it sends a message of authority, and it also accommodates duty belts and accessories and equipment that one might carry, especially in like the emergency department, the parking lots, and the general environment of the hospital. I would go that route. Now, if I'm dealing with a behavioral health situation or a pediatric situation, I would probably go with a softer look, like the polo shirt and the khakis, or a blazer and tie type of affair. But because I don't think you need that kind of like overwhelming look of force in those particular situations. If you're in a behavioral health situation, it might be counterproductive to present that kind of like aggressive image. For the most part, I'm a believer in the use of the paramilitary or police type look. The hard look is what they like to call it, the hard look versus the soft look.
Fair enough. Now, when there's not a good uniform in place, so when the standards aren't being met, what are some of the common issues that you see?
Brine, it's a laundry list. First of all, ill-fitting uniforms, ill-tailored, not tailored at all, stained, faded patches. The list can go on. Inappropriate footwear. If you want to talk nightmares, when I first got to my hospital, the security officers were tasked with changing tires out in the parking lot for employees, and sometimes even for I guess patients and customers. Well, you can imagine, and our shirts were a white uniform shirt. Well, you can imagine in Phoenix, in 120-degree heat, poor security officers out there changing a tire. What is he or she going to look like when that task is done? They look like a total disaster, with grease and sweat and dirt and the whole bit. And so I put an immediate stop to that type of service because, first of all, it has little or nothing to do with security. And second of all, hey, I subscribe to AAA. They can. I don't expect somebody to come out and change my tire. And so, because then the guy would change the tire and he'd look like totally unserviceable for the rest of the shift.
Right.
In another case, I was interviewing a guy, and he was in uniform, and he had duct tape as a belt, holding up his pants. Wow. Duct tape.
That's creative.
Oh, well, yeah. You got to give him points for creativity. But is this a security department or like home improvement? I'm not quite sure what we were doing. But and then they would eat meals and they spaghetti sauce all over the place, and it's horrendous. So I guess what I'm saying is, whether you're starting a department or you're assuming the command of a department, you need to set the standards straight. You need to make sure everyone knows what is acceptable and what isn't acceptable, and don't think that it's common sense. You should be dressed appropriately. It's common sense. You shouldn't wear a shirt with spaghetti all down the front. Common sense is a short commodity sometimes. And so you do have to spell it out a lot of times for people. Enforce the dress code. Another thing we have issues with is the extreme tattooing, right? Which I know a lot of government agencies require guys and gals to cover up their ink if it's beyond a certain threshold, and you need to make sure that's understood at point of hire, and not after the person's already on the job and it comes as a surprise to them.
Yeah, I think in terms of any standards, really, it is important to make sure that all new incoming employees are aware of them beforehand. And like you said, it is important to spell things out too, because common sense isn't as common as we'd like to think sometimes.
Oh, for sure, for sure. I mean, the guy with the duct tape belt just blew me away. I mean, he didn't see a problem with it. At least his pants weren't down around his ankles. I thought, well, thank you for that.
Oh man, yeah. I guess electrical tape may have blended in better, but whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah, really.
Now, in terms of addressing uniform issues, what advice would you offer to program leaders, both in-house and of outsourced programs?
Well, first of all, if you're a contractor and you're providing marketing materials with flashy, professional, costly uniforms, that is what your client is going to expect to be seen, on the post. All right. I had a boss once said, Cole, he points to this sloppy security officer and he goes like, that's not what I'm paying for. He points to the brochure and he says, this is what I'm paying for. And so make sure the expectations are managed. I mean, if you're promising something, make sure it's delivered. And I don't care what side of the house you're on, whether it's proprietary or contract. Don't underestimate the cost of a decent uniform. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's very cheap, but it doesn't last. And a lot of departments, both in-house and otherwise, will try to reuse uniforms until they're just totally unserviceable. Invest in the uniform, okay? Invest in the uniform. Get quality clothing. I've seen it where they don't provide for like wet weather or cold weather uniforms, for example. That's not built into the budget. So, but it can get cold here in Arizona. It can rain pretty heavily here in Arizona, and these guys aren't equipped with the right gear. Likewise, if you're going to field a bicycle unit, bicycle patrol, those are specialized uniforms. They cost money, so you got to figure that into the budget. I will tell you one short war story that when I was at the Fortune 500 technology company during the dot-com boom, stocks were going through the roof, and everybody was spending money right and left. And so I was told I could spend a whole bunch of money on upgrading the uniforms of my in-house proprietary staff. So I spent, gosh, I don't know, like $40,000 on LAPD quality uniforms with custom-made patches and even proprietary minted shields for their breast shields, and footwear, high-quality footwear, leather gear, the whole 9 yards. And so I ordered all that stuff. Of course, that doesn't happen overnight. So I ordered all that stuff, and what happens was, well, after the dot-com boom came the bust, and the stock market had plummeted, and here I am, the security manager, with 40 or 50 grand worth of product on order, and people are wondering why I'm buying this stuff in such desperate financial times. Just to let you know, you got to read the culture and read the financial condition of your company. But that was not a very comfortable position to be in.
No, I could definitely understand that being a difficult position to be in. But yeah, it's a good point that you bring up in terms of the uniforms. I know it looks like a nice cost savings when you see a really affordable uniform, but when you have to replace it 2 or 3 times, those savings quickly evaporate.
Oh yeah, and plus they try to stretch the life of it out when it's faded, it's stained, it's unacceptable. So just some of the things to look at, and like I say, in many cases, what you're buying, yeah, you're buying the time of an officer, but you're also buying the uniform. And if the uniform does not present the image or send the message that you want it to send, it's really kind of counterproductive.
No, absolutely it is. And the other thing you mentioned too is just making sure that officers have the appropriate equipment they need for the different weather. Now
Yeah,
I've seen that, they have to go outside in the cold, and where I am, we have lots of snow at times. So if you don't have the proper winter attire, people aren't going to go out there with with just a uniform in the wintertime. So you often
yeah.
see people wearing match uniforms, and it just presents badly on the department.
Yeah, when they have to go and put on their privately owned, winter coat over their uniform, it's not what you want to see. And because I spent 20 years in the military, I wore a uniform as a living, and people who do that, whether they're police or military, they're used to uniforms and they understand the purpose of a uniform and they understand how to wear a uniform. Unfortunately, there aren't that many people with that kind of experience today. So these people you're putting into uniforms may not have any idea what the purpose is of the uniform or how to wear it properly. And again, going back to the thing like don't depend on common sense because it's in short supply many times. So, if they understand why it's important to wear a uniform properly, how it makes their job easier, it can really make a big difference.
Actually, one thing too, I want to kind of circle back to that you mentioned earlier when we were just talking about some of the negative impacts of uniform issues. Now, I don't have the statistic in front of me, but I know when inmates who had actually assaulted or even worse, murdered law enforcement officials or any uniformed first responders, including frontline security, one of the things that was frequently highlighted when they were interviewed was when they were asked why they chose their target. A lot of times the uniform was a big contributing factor. They looked at the condition of the uniform. So an officer who was more like disheveled or just, maybe had a duct tape had duct tape for a belt. they obviously they don't look as professional. So those were kind of some of the indicators for, who
Oh,
they
sure.
decided to target.
Yeah, I get it. Well, that's what it kind of goes back to I'm saying, like, why make your job tougher? Why make it more dangerous? I mean, if you look sharp and squared away and competent and present yourself well, you're going to be a lot better off. For example, when I have officers at a reception desk or at an entry control point, they can sit at the desk if they need to. But when somebody approaches the desk, I expect the officer to stand up to communicate with the other person across the desk, and I expect that to happen because one, it's respectful, okay, that you unbuckle your seatbelt and stand up to talk to the person, but also it gives you a tactical advantage should you be assaulted. Okay,
Right.
Sitting in a chair is not your best option at that point. So, uniform, comportment on post, eye contact, even just the choice of your language makes all the difference in the world. And a sloppy, I mean, if you don't care enough about your appearance, why should I? Why should I even care about your safety? You're apparently can barely get yourself dressed to get to work, so you're going to be an easy target.
Now, I think that segues good to the next point I want to bring up is for the officers. What advice can you offer to the officers in terms of just maintaining a positive appearance and good command presence?
Well, again, it makes their job easier. It certainly makes them promotable. Okay, I can tell you that the way you appear in a uniform is one of the key indicators that I look at as far as an officer's competence. It makes their job easier. Okay, people will be more compliant. If you have an unkempt appearance and you go out there and tell someone that it's a no smoking zone, you're more likely to get negative feedback and possibly even physically assaulted, quite frankly, if you're presenting this unprofessional image. But if you go out there with confidence, there's that command presence and politeness but firmness, it can make things go a lot easier, and you're going to go home a lot safer at the end of the shift.
Oh, absolutely. One thing I want to kind of circle back to that you mentioned earlier was, when you were talking about your security team originally doing some tasks that weren't security related, which obviously contributed to having a poor appearance at times.
Yeah.
So for anybody who may be faced with that, if they're coming into a new program and there's things that their security officers are doing that they probably shouldn't be, what advice would you give them on moving those tasks somewhere else or kind of strategizing around that?
Well, when security is held in low esteem in a hospital or I guess anywhere else, all the stuff that nobody wants to do gravitates to security. Okay, I have seen hospitals use their security staff as landscapers. Watering plants, picking weeds. Again, I mentioned the changing the tire. I've seen security officers on midnight shift selling sandwiches in the cafeteria. None of this has anything to do with security or protective services. So I would suggest that if you're moving into that, if you acquire an organization like this, you do a review and you go up and you talk about it with whoever your reporting official is, and explain it rationally with why these are not good tests and this is not a good use of resources. Because I've seen it, and I said, that hasn't. Now, this does not mean you don't go above and beyond in some cases, but that above and beyond should be as a part of the clinical team and not as a part of the landscaping team. Does that make sense?
Oh, that definitely makes sense.
Because my theory is that a healthcare security organization should be part and parcel of the patient care team. And there's a lot of things that a security officer, well motivated, well trained, well equipped, and uniformed can do to help with, for example, the HCAP scores of a particular hospital. Now, I don't know, in Canada, are you familiar with the HCAP program down here?
I am familiar with it, yeah.
Yeah, well, for your international listeners who may not be, it's a federal program here in the States that measures patient satisfaction after a hospital stay. And if a hospital gets a certain score high enough, they receive increased reimbursements from the federal government. So in other words, they get paid more. So happy patients mean more bucks, in other words. And there are things that a hospital security officer can do that can contribute to these scores. For example, well, just think about it. Who's the first and last person a patient typically sees?
It's a great point.
You know, and when they roll into the parking lot and they can't find a parking spot because all the employees have taken the primo real estate, that's not a good start for a hospital experience. So you got to enforce parking regulations out there to make sure the people who need the parking have it. Noise discipline. Keep your radios turned down. Wear an earpiece. You don't need to be blaring stuff all over the place. The list can go on and on. But for example, if you're walking down a hallway and a patient looks confused or lost, stop. Ask, is there something I can do for you? You know, it's part of the job. But these things and a lot more. For example, a security officer's walking down the hall. Patient sticks her head out the room and says, "Can I get a warm blanket?" Well, the security officer, he can go and ask a nurse or a nursing assistant for that, or he can just go to the heater and deliver the blanket himself. And it makes a big difference. He's not bothering the busy clinical staff, and he's also providing value add on the part of security. So there's a lot that can happen there. And just doing a simple environmental assessment. When you leave an area, look around. Does it need the attention of housekeeping, or is there something you can pick up and throw in the garbage without bothering housekeeping? Little things like this can make a difference.
Absolutely. Now, I know we've covered a lot in this conversation, Cole. Is there anything I haven't asked you yet that you would like to discuss?
I would just like, if your organization isn't doing it, consider having a security representative talk at new employee orientation and just kind of stress, especially the new kids, the new employees who this might be their first job, express the highly unusual environment that they're preparing to enter. This is not like working at McDonald's. It's not like working down at the mall. The hospital is a very pressurized, a very unique environment. And when you're in it and when you're working, you're on stage and you need to be alert and situationally aware. And you need to be very, very aware. People will get, I can guarantee you, they get very blissfully ignorant as to the unique place that we work. And it's a very, very special, nobody wants to be there. Very few people. What does a prison and a hospital have in common? Very few people want to be there, okay? And so it's a stressful environment, and our employees, your employees, need to keep that in mind 24/7.
Absolutely. Now, as we wrap up here, do you have a special message you would like to share with the Healthcare Security Cast community?
Only be thinking ahead. Okay, be thinking ahead. What's coming down the pike? I'm sure this is true in Canada, and I'm sure it's true overseas with your listeners. But at least here in the United States, we have this growth of outpatient clinics, and these folks are often out there without their dedicated security, without dedicated IT, without dedicated human resources. And so, at least from a security standpoint, think how you might be able to meet their security and safety needs as they're out there on these islands away from the hospital. Of course, we have telemedicine, and we'll just have to see where that takes us going into the future. look at your home health care operations. That can be fraught with security issues for your staff as well. Be thinking of some of the options. And that's all I would say, Brine. I just think it's an exciting time to be in the business, but things are changing and we have to be prepared for the change.
Absolutely. Cole, for everybody who wants to connect with you, what is the best way to do so?
You can, my email is colonsecurity@cox.net. Homepage is colonsecurity.com. I'm on LinkedIn and I'm starting a YouTube channel. And if you want to check out some of the courses on Udemy, go on over there. Some of them are free, and they're all economically priced. But anyway, you can go over there to Udemy and I guess search on my name or whatever and find what the offerings are.
Awesome stuff. Thank you for taking the time to be with me today, Cole. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed the conversation.
Okay, same here. Thank you very much.
The Healthcare Security Cast is available on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music and Audible, and many other platforms as well. Check out our link tree on your computer or mobile device. And this can be found at linktree/Brine Hamilton. That's linktr.ee/Brine, BRINE Hamilton. Again, that's linktr.ee/Brine Hamilton. Or if it's easier, send me a text at 647-372-2042. That's 647-372-2042. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have or share any links you may be looking for. Thanks again for listening. Until next time, take care and stay safe.